making a painting, people tend to think it's really relaxing and freeing. And for me, it is freeing in a way, but it's so much struggling through the mud, sort of like dreaming that you need to run, but you can't quite get yourself to move. I think it's what painting feels like sometimes. But you just have to carry on and keep going. I often think of my drawings, pictures as like poems in the way you assemble unexpected meanings and see what story they have to tell. It's almost like they sort of speak for themselves at the end. When I want to express something, I just go around it and go around it, and it's just a bit elliptical and enigmatic, and it's placing things together in a kind of strange, almost panicked way, like it pulls out of you, it's collective and conscious, and as if the world was full of meaning, and just like sometimes it just jumps at you and you don't quite know why. Yeah, so that tension between realism and sort of almost what you call abstraction is always present and always really hard to navigate, I think. Something that becomes really limitless, you're not limited by perception, you just free and draw whatever you want, but it's really hard, and I'm still not there, and maybe I'll never be there. Hi, I'm Margaux Carpentier. I'm an artist and illustrator, and I'm at the Jackson Studio to talk about my practice. Like all kids, I started from a very young age, and I just never stopped, I guess. Never stopped exploring. Yeah, so I grew up near Giverny. It was the sort of impressionist, sort of iconic place where Monet painted the lilies and had his garden. And I remember, when I was little, my mother used to take me there to the garden. It was fascinating. I remember going to a private view at the gallery and seeing his paintings and like being mesmerized. I must have been 5 running around. It was really slippery floor. I had fun. I'm not sure it has to do with the locations, but my parents decided to move there from Paris, and they were both very creative, and they made quite a few artist friends. So I'd have all these people coming to my house to party and have dinner. And like my parents' friend Francis, who is an oil painter, I don't know, he had a big impact on me as well, because we used to go to his workshop, to his studio. Yeah, it was fascinating to see actually practicing adults, really inspiring. For a very short period of time, actually, a child doesn't care about representing what's there. Well, they want to represent what's there, but not in a very accurate way. Like, they can't quite control their hands anyway, and they produce the most beautiful drawings. You lose that magic, and I remember losing it as a child, and like suddenly sitting in front of a sheet of paper and thinking, what am I going to draw? I don't know what to do. Like, your hands feel like stone, and the pens and pencils that so excited you before, you don't know how to use them anymore. And I got obsessed, like a lot of children, with copying things, representing things accurately, but you can't quite do it, so you get frustrated. But there's also that pressure from society, from school, teachers, to be good. And in people's head, being good is being technically good. Sadly, is the way we educate our children, I think. And I think it's really wrong to put that pressure on them to sort of draw according to the law of perspective. And learning all this is good, I think, but it shouldn't be the end goal of a practice. I liked what we learned at school, but I also thought the school system was very boring, so I decided to just go into art school and see what happened. I didn't really decide anything, it just happened, I guess. People often asked how you develop a style, and how I develop my style is through storytelling, really. Telling a story through a being, maybe an animal, a person, maybe something hybrids, maybe a plant. I had to make these living things and sort of character, if you want, appealing and special and vivid and really expressive. And I think that defined my style and that sort of refined it. They are often in movement, sort of flowing and flying, running. But I feel like there's a big tension in my work, whereas things I draw tend to be quite heavy, quite grounded, quite sort of heavily impacted by gravity. I also want them to be quite dynamic, so I tend to paint them in sort of like unrealistic, sometimes extravagant jump poses or things like that. I've noticed that recently I've done a whole series where people are a lot more like almost like stones, and it was a series of people and stones actually, and they're very still, very sort of on the floor. I like contradictions all the time, so I like a lot of movement but also heaviness and weight. I went to art school when I was 18 in Paris. It's called an applied art school. It's everything but fine art, I guess. And that school was quite good. It was very strict, very rigid, and we had loads of different subjects. So even though I was not at my happiest there, I think the applied skills that we learned got really useful to me later on. I also learned to drink very cheap wine in cafes with tutors and students. It was a terrible lifestyle, really. But yeah, part of the experience. So for the second part of my degree, I went to study at UCA Farnham in Surrey, where it was completely the opposite of Paris, where I had previously studied. I remember all the students telling me, what brought you from Paris to Farnham, Surrey, being really shocked about my choice. But I actually loved finding myself in the countryside. My course was really free and I had the motivation to really make the most of it. And I was lucky to make a very wholesome bunch of friends. And which meant that we went on a lot of walks, and I think the countryside really influenced all of us, all our practices. We used to tell stories and about animals and the forest and create a whole mythology really about our life there. I arrived in September with my suitcases, spent a day crying, and then had the best time ever. And illustration at this point of my studies, at the end of my degree, let's say, was something quite new to me and something really exciting. I've always loved drawings, I've always loved books, I've always loved stories. So it seemed like finally like sort of grasping where I wanted to be. I remember earlier on when I was in Paris, I had this old tutor telling me, I can see you being an illustrator at your little desk with a cat on your laps. And I thought, what is he on about? Just illustration? No, I've got more ambition than that, whatever it was. Like, I don't know. It sounds to me now like the best thing to do. And I'm not a cat person, really. I love dogs. And here I am 15, 20 years later with my giant cat on my laps at my desk, working on illustrated books. So shortly after university, I started to find work as an illustrator. So working as an illustrator means you are sent briefs and you need to create according to a brief, more or less freely. I like the freer side of it, but I love materials. I love sort of exploring new things. From illustration, you can sort of broaden your practice and sort of branch out. I used to want to make beautiful pictures to please people and to appeal to people. And sometimes this is obviously still relevant within my most personal practice. I think I want to explore the idea of being a little bit disturbing, a little bit clashy, a little bit disgusting, and that's what really excites me, I think, is to create something that is a little bit ugly, gives you that funny, disturbing feeling inside, but that is also very compelling. Watercolours are really important in my practice. It's almost what gets me to make the work sometimes, is that I fall in love with a colour and I want to use it so much, and then I need to find a narrative around it or something like that. And that's when going to the art shop comes in handy, or looking at swatches. I even have swatches in my toilet that I look at. And trying to put colors together and look at them and think what works together and what doesn't. And actually, there's no colors that don't work together, really. Obviously, I've got colors coming back all the time, like ultramarine, vermilion, orange, egg yolk yellow. But I love venturing out of my zone of comfort. I never used to use green, for example. Slowly, I'm trying to introduce green into my work, and now I'm loving it, and I'm quite addicted to different tones of green. The color I can't live without, it's a hard one. In life, it'd probably be yellow. I'm obsessed with yellow. I love yellow. But in my paintings, probably this kind of orangey red, very specific, bright vermilion red, almost orange. I don't know how you call it. Different people call it different names, but I love working with metallic pigments. I love their shade, first of all, the different shade of gold and coppers and sometimes silver. And I love the way they catch the light. And the way I organize my palette, I think I plan for colors at the same time that I plan for the composition and the theme of the painting. I try to limit it a little bit as much as possible, and not always possible. I make up the palette in my head sometimes. It helps me to visualize the colors and associate them in my head. Then I pick up my pencils or my crayons or whatever, and I try them on paper. And what I want to do is be pleasing, but also not too pleasing. I want a clash to happen. I want something surprising. I want something a little bit disturbing when it comes to how color interact with each other. Leaving university, that can be really distressing. It was actually. But what I did is that I decided to move from Surrey to London, which was the nearest big city that I could think of. I didn't want to go back home, wondering what to do. But I had a little bit of a lead, which was some of my work was published from the student show into Creative Review, which was really cool. And some people saw it and wanted to buy some of the prints that I had produced. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to find a screen printing studio, sign up and print my work. And I did. I landed into Print Club, which is really close from Jackson's art shop, actually, in Dalston. And that was a kind of lovely place to be at the time because it was a lot of us creative. So it allowed me to meet other people that were doing the same things that I was doing. It allowed me to sell my work through them. And little by little, word to mouth, I started building up my sort of practice and client base. I found a job to sort of pay for my rent. And I was lucky. I looked after kids, which meant that the hours were short, flexible, and quite well paid compared to a pub job. So it allowed me to have enough time to work on the side. And my rent was a lot cheaper than it is now. I started living in really cheap places, so I didn't need so much money to sustain myself. So what was important is to have the time to actually do the work, because if you go into a full-time job, I guess it becomes really challenging to progress in your practice. But somehow I navigated that without planning much about it. I should draw my cat a lot more. I realized recently that he's not included in any paintings. I think because he's just too fabulous and I'm too shy. I need a special occasion to introduce him to my paintings, but I will. I use a lot of symbols and myth in my work. Sometimes they come to me, or I see something on the street. I see, I don't know, like an abandoned toy, and I'm like, oh my God, it's a frog. Our frogs are back, and frogs kind of need to appear in my work. I get a little bit obsessed by things that feel call me a little bit. It's strange to say. For example, the fish comes into my work quite a lot. The meaning of the fish for me is sexuality, is strangeness, it's something slippery, something cold. It's kind of weird. It's a weird thing, and it often lives in people. I think animals are a real nostalgic thing with me. I used to tell stories with them and include them, write stories about them actually. And I feel like we tend to attribute human thoughts to animals, which it's not what I'm trying to say here, and I don't want to do that anymore, but there's such a good way to express feelings or sensations almost. I love drawing insects, for example, and because I feel like sometimes I feel like I'm full of insects, and moving inside my guts and heart and lungs, and they produce all these sensations in me. So sometimes I just include them in my paintings to sort of illustrate that. Also, death and this sort of transformative aspect of matter, I guess, and insects are a big part of that. I'm a little bit obsessed with drawing snakes as well, maybe because it's so fun. It's like this zigzag and you can introduce whatever pattern and color to them, and they're so characterful and heavy. There's a lot of heavy symbolism attached to them. Poor sods. I draw a lot of flowers. I like their colors and their sort of surrealness. I'm not really interested in representing faithfully a specific type of flower, but I'm interested in the shape of them and sort of like the sort of like almost sexual organ look of them. And I often feel like flowers look like they have a face inside them or something, so it's real personality to them. And they become this strange, ambivalent being that we almost pull out of ourselves, sort of like the secret side of us. Yeah, I like looking at the world we live in today to link it with sort of like foundational myths. I feel like all the stories are still so relevant today and so visceral, and they jump at your face and you think, oh yeah, this is it. This is exactly what we're doing. It's the myth of Sisyphus, like rolling the ball uphill constantly. We don't know why, and it's heavy and hard, and keep doing the same, making the same mistake over and over again, and not looking backwards, not listening to anything else but your own voice is where we are today. And my most recent pictures are full of liquids and fluids and water. Body fluids I'm really interested in, and what happens inside of us. Big part of us is water, I think, and how thinking of your body as something liquid is I don't know, fascinating. It's driven by the moon or whatever forces drive what is liquid on Earth. I have like a vague idea of what things mean for me, but then I want just like people to see the work and take it wherever they want. And I'm interested to hear everybody's interpretation of whatever comes out. So I work using a lot of mediums and format. I can work 2D on a canvas, on a computer, 3D in ceramics, and sort of wood panel installations involving string and all kind of things. It's part me not being able to make decisions and wanting to just have everything. Sometimes I feel a little bit like that. Challenging situations really excite me, and discovering something new, exploring something new. I like routines, but I don't really like routines within sort of my work. And I need novelty a lot. I want to dive into whatever I try. I don't want to just like try it and abandon it. So for my painting practice, I tend to use a lot of acrylic paints. I love the vividness of them and the fact that they dry really quickly, which suits my sometimes impatient nature. My favorite brands to use are golden. I think their range of color is amazing and the quality is mostly always really great. Some are really opaque and creamy and some are really transparent. And I've started juggling between the flatness of the opaque colors and the really patchy textured aspect of the transparent, and I love juggling both. I really like the Jackson's. It's not because it's you, but I really like the Jackson's range of acrylics. I find the pigments amazing and the texture of them, yeah, it's all perfect, really. Range of color is a little less broad, so that's why I tend to mix both Jackson's and golden. Mix colors a lot, and I can be really accurate with it. Recently, I've loved using the color right out of the tube. I do a bit of both, obviously, and it makes it really handy when you've painted your background. And if you mix it, I'm quite unorganized, so I might just like run out of the color and never. Sometimes you don't pinpoint the right quantity, and if you use it right out of the tube, you can always go back to it, and that's just very handy. When it comes to watercolor, I love the Kurotaki watercolor boxes. I think I picked it, because it was visually so pleasing, and I was traveling at the time and I was looking at something portable, and it comes into this beautiful green box, and I thought, this is perfect for me, and the colors like just really pop to your face, and that's what I was looking for, something really vivid. I love the Turner acrylic gouache range. They come into so many colors, and they're really flat. The texture is really flat. It's almost like magic when you apply it on paper, and the colors are so vivid. When it comes to pencils and crayons, my absolute favorite is Caran d'Ache. I love their watercolor range of pencils that, again, are really highly pigmented, and their Neocolor pastel crayon. The watercolor range, they come in so many colors, and you just have to buy them all, and they're so fun to use. So in my screen printing practice, paints have a huge importance because you sort of mix your paint with a medium to create the ink that you want to print with. So I love that, and it makes, obviously, it means that you can choose whatever vivid color you want to have on paper, or metallic colors, or neon colors. Through my illustration practice, I've worked quite a lot, and I don't have to, but it comes in handy to work on the computer, and I enjoy that. I love working in very flat color vectors, and there's something really juicy and satisfying about it. What I like is working that contrast. I'm going to have a very sort of flat and very precise area, very controlled, but the whole point of painting and drawing is losing that control, which is really hard, and I haven't quite mastered yet, but I'm working on it. I achieve that through exploring different materials and associating different materials together, and exploring texture created by the medium and working them together in unexpected ways. It's always really exciting to be approached by a client and asked to work on a new brief. It keeps things very fresh and new because it's never the same, you know. I illustrate quite a few books for children, but not exclusively. I want to illustrate more fiction, really, and maybe write my own, but it's something that I need to tackle. One of my favorite book projects ever was a fiction book. Caroline Duffy releases a Christmas poem every year, and I got to illustrate the one from the year before last, and it was perfect. It was about animals in a pub. I love pubs, so it was such a dream. I drew it on paper with inks and paints, and that was super fun, super exciting, and I was really happy with the results. A few years ago, I done some work for Lush. That was really, I don't know, I quite like that brand and their ethics, and it was really exciting. I work for also that toy and activity brand called Gecko. They're a French brand that they sell around the world. And the idea of producing something for children from age 0 to 12, you know, it's something that might have like quite a lot of importance for a child, and they might tell stories with them. I illustrate little wooden characters, creative activities as well. I find that really, really inspiring. I paint quite a few murals every time I'm given the opportunity. I'd like more opportunity to paint murals actually, but because it's not my main practice, I think it gets a little bit buried under other things. But I'm completely in love with it, and so yeah, it really takes you out of your daily life, and I love that. And people always interact with you when they see you paint on the street or in a space. They come and tell you all kind of stories or comment on the painting. I don't know, there's something really satisfying in having a very small drawing and translating it on a big surface. Really fun just to stretch your whole body and sketch and occupy the place. Sometimes using a loose grid or sort of a mock-up that I put on the computer, and I layer my sketch on the surface, and I use a window or a wall to be my sort of mark and work from there. So sometimes they're really led by what is needed for the space. For something like Homerton Hospital, it was sort of beautifying a very worn-out corner of the hospital. And there I had to be a little bit careful with designing, find a concept behind it. I worked around medicinal plants and almost spiritual, tranquil figures. We had to be mindful of colors. I had to work with the team. They told me to not use anything too vivid, especially avoiding red being the color of blood, and just like to make people feel tiny bit better, whatever their may be experiences when they come and sit in the garden. That's something really pleasing, to have a sort of functional purpose within what I create. I really like that. For all aspects of my practice, the way I approach starting a project, I think it's quite similar each way. With or without a brief, I just need to think about it all the time, go for a walk and think about what I'm going to do, think about the concept, that the idea I want to communicate, and then visually form the picture in my head. Sometimes is quite helpful. It can be a little bit disappointing because sometimes your head creates something that your hands can't quite get to, but that happens less and less, hopefully. And then I sit down. Maybe it's I love taking myself outside to do that. Maybe a park or a cafe or a pub. I sit down with my sketchbook. I sketch the idea. I like the sketch to be very quick and maybe quite small actually, because there's a quality to like small scribbles on the corner of a page that is really essential to whatever I might create later on that interests me. So I do this initial sketch that usually looks better than anything else, but never mind. And then I develop the sketch a little bit. I might plan the colors either in my head or on paper. Sometimes the sketchbook might not be to plan anything. Sometimes it might be just a drawing that I'm doing at a sort of moment where I want to draw, and I'm like storing ideas into it almost. Sometimes recording something with your phone on cameras can be really useful. Quite often I forget that I took the photo and it gets lost into the cloud. One of my favorite books I've illustrated is about animal anatomy, and there's like very little resource about it. So I was sent by the publishers this random pixelated images, and I had to make the most of them and type in what scorpion intestine looks like, or just random things like that. Research through the physical world as well. When I feel a little bit uninspired, I go to an exhibition, I go to a museum or a gallery, and that's always really stimulating and motivating to pick up the pace and find energy again. There's no set rule on how I build up my work. It depends on the medium I'm using. I've done quite a few watercolor drawings in the past couple of years, and with these, I think it starts with a mark, sort of a brush dipped in ink. I make a mark and I see where it takes me. And that's really, I love working like that. It's really sort of organic and it forces me to be spontaneous. But when it comes to painting on canvas or paper, yeah, I paint the background, sort of a background color, whatever it might be, based on the design a little bit, based on the whatever color element I think should come out first. Sometimes it's based on texture too. And then I build from it. Quite often, I'll never learn. Quite often, I do my sketch on the canvas and then I'm like, oh, damn it, I need to paint the background color, so the sketch is completely going to disappear and I'm going to have to do it again on the color. And I've done this many, many times. And yeah, I just never learn. I think I want to take up all the space. And I tend to build from the center, which is sometimes detrimental because I think I'm quite trained now to like layer my things more or less where I want them to be, but sometimes I'm going to draw like the main element and it's not quite going to be centered and it's too late to change it. So what do you do from here? You just accept the fact that it's not centered and then, and then what? I found myself going through all the stages. When you start, it looks amazing, and then you work it a little bit more, and it's falling into pieces, and you think, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to salvage this. Quite often, I feel like my work is going wrong, it's really frustrating. But every time, I feel it's hard to describe, but you have to feel a kind of trust your process, trust yourself, and keep going. And eventually, I think mostly if you keep going, it just comes back together. It's kind of like there's a very messy middle bit where things get really frustrating. And yeah, it looks bad and you're like, this is never going to happen. But then if you know, and I know that now, I have this kind of trust. And in the end, just it'll be okay. It's kind of magic, really. It's not always okay, but mostly it is. Whatever okay means. Yeah, it's always exciting to think about what surface you're gonna apply your medium to, and there's so many lovely options that it's thrilling to choose. I really enjoy, sadly, the most expensive linen canvas, something a little bit more organic about them that I find really satisfying. And when it comes to paper, again, very exciting. I love working on very heavy paper that doesn't get wobbed when you apply lots of liquidy inks or watercolor or paint on it. When it comes to brushes, I used to work with a lot of synthetic brushes, and I still do, because ethically it's a bit less scary, but I find them now less durable. I find that they just, maybe I don't know how to take care of them properly, even though I try, but I find that the fiber don't hold together as well as natural fibers. I love working with very soft brushes as well as rough, hard ones to create different textures. I don't like saying goodbye. I don't like things ending. So yeah, it's the same for the work. So what I do is quite often I'm limited in time. I have to put my sculpture in a kiln and it's tonight, or I have to present a painting, I have to send a painting, and that will define the finishing moment. I just have to stop. Other times, I guess I just stop and I put it aside and I feel like, oh, maybe I'm going to come back to it later. And then I might look at it a couple of days later and think, actually, you know what? It's kind of looking okay. I have a painting that I've started years ago and it's finished, but every time I look at it, I think, oh, I want to add to it. And maybe I will one day, and that'd be quite fun. My studio space is kind of all over the place. I used to have different studios around Hackney, really, mainly. But eventually, we got evicted. My whole building got evicted of my previous studio. That was a couple of years ago. And since when I've been working from home, which there's something quite nice about it. It means that I can hang out with my cat and sometimes when I'm really busy, go straight from bed to my desk, which is, I know, not a very considered not a very healthy practice, but I quite like early mornings for working. I don't, at the moment, have a set space. It feels a little bit nomadic, and there's something that I like about that. I don't know, maybe I'll go back one day to a more rigid studio routine. But when I had my studio the last few years, I had a studio, it felt a little bit wrong. It felt like somehow commuting to work and sitting at my desk and then commuting back home, and there's something that I didn't like about that. So I'm still looking for what suits me. So I tend to exist amongst what we call organized chaos. And I don't know, it might feel like just chaos to other people, but for me, yeah, it's got a logic behind it. I'm not a minimalist. I've got a lot of things, but I quite like things being as tidy as possible. If I want to break that routine, I'd go and work at my ceramic studio. It's a members-based studio, so there's always a lot of people there. You've got all the space to make the work. Or I'd go to my screen printing studio and the same, just chat and be around people. And I love that sort of contrast between being completely alone and sharing communal space and being able to make a mess and sort of completely expand my practice with different mediums. Natural light is really important. I think, I tend to switch off in the evenings when the sun comes down anyway. My brain doesn't quite work the same way. So my creative energy is very much, when it comes to visual stuff, very much associated with light and daylight and sunlight. So it means a lot of time spent alone, and in that alone time you kind of need company. So I tend to listen to a lot of audiobooks. Weirdly, I love French radio. I don't know, like I tend to not be so attached to my sort of the culture I grew up in. Obviously, I'm French and I still am, but listening to French radio has a specific sort of nostalgic connection for me, and it helps me sort of still be in touch with France. So it reminds me the morning before school as well, drinking coffee with my mum. It's kind of nice. Obviously, we're all a product of our times, of our culture, but what is a reference? The artists that massively influenced me change over the years, and it's also things that I might have seen growing up, but I don't really remember, but they were just there. Recently, Niki de Saint-Phal came back a lot as a reference recently, and I used to love her as a kid and as a teenager, and I kind of forgot about her. Picasso is a huge one. I don't like when people say that my work looked like his or anything like that, but it's just what is said. I don't know. I've discovered Judy Chicago recently. Last time I went to New York, I was lucky to go to New York, and she had a retrospective at the New Museum, and I completely discovered her work. I'm really interested into Louise Bourgeois' thought process and sort of a psyche as well. Who else? I'm sure I'm forgetting my favorite ones, but feels almost self-indulgent to sort of create something just for yourself. I don't know. I'm trying to grow confidence into doing it more and more, and existing within it and taking up space with the more traditional medium that is a painting on canvas, not being so scared of just doing it. I'm daring to go deeper into myself and express things in a more direct manner that I didn't quite know how to express earlier on in my practice. It feels really liberating, and also the medium is so addictive and so satisfying and frustrating. It's a constant struggle. It's seeing your own reflection in the mirror almost, and suddenly you realize that just look a certain way. I think it's just about sketching and thinking of ideas all the time and keeping present and curious and looking at things and looking at the world and trying to make stories in your head. Just keep going, keep exploring, and don't be scared about an artwork going wrong, because it never really does. Just forget about being good, maybe, in a way. Forget about reality and say what you want to say.